Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. This is Sam Prentice Makes Things Happen. I'm Sam Prentice, back once again making it happen. Hey, you know the routine by now. Thank you for tuning in once again. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing at the moment. If you've locked into this channel already and kind of understood what I'm trying to do, as you know, I'm making a series of videos for the RatRig V-Core 3 at the moment, which is an awesome Core XY printer that I'm working with at the moment, which I discovered way back, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. And it's it's exploding, it's taking off, it's an enormously impressive printer, and I'm getting totally behind those guys down there because they're doing an awesome job. So if you have ordered one, keep it locked in. I can't wait for you guys to see this printer because it's just insane. We've got a ton of other stuff coming up as well. I've got somebody that I can't tell you about just yet because we're still working out the kinks and working how we're doing things as well. Next week I'm filming a Clipper interview with Michael Laws from Teaching Tech, and also Mikkel from RatRig, obviously. He's the creator of the V-Core OS system as well. So I just wanted to kind of, if you're in that sort of zone where you're thinking, hey, hang on a minute, what does all this mean? How does this all work? I want to go through that, and it's not about teaching all the ins and outs. It's about kind of the layman's terms of things and how this is all going to work and how this is going to affect you with your build, obviously. So let's get straight on into it, shall we? As an avid user of Slice equipment, a relationship with it was formed back in early 2020 with the release of the Copperhead following the successful Kickstarter campaign, which reached 129% of the goal. My aim at the time, of course, was to upgrade the Creality CR10S5 with this equipment and the Bondtech DDX, and although the upgrade path was super successful, it did expose other challenges such as bed movement limitations due to the amount of filament being placed on the bed, aka inertia, build quality of the printer, and pushing the 3D printer beyond its limits. That being the case, around this time of finishing that build, I started looking for a new printer as a kit which I could add all the best elements into without compromising quality, speed, and without the limitations I'd previously experienced or the need to upgrade yet another 3D printer. The RatRig V-Core 3 has stepped up as my Creality S5 replacement. The Supercube, linear railed, open sourced, AVA compatible Core XY with a huge build area seems to be a huge talking point for any avid 3D printer end user. So where does Slice Engineering and Bondtech fit in? Well, personally, without being in danger of being branded a snob due to my previous experience with the Copperhead and that product banishing heat creep altogether with fast flow rates on the Copperhead of 20 to 25 millimeters per second squared and also 30 to 35 millimeters per second squared on one of the two Mosquitoes, the mission is really ejecting molten plastic out of the high end at the fastest rate possible, which is obviously material dependent, resulting in use of not only normal PLA, PETG and ABS, but also engineering grade materials. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great today. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as you know, I'm fully absorbed with the RatRig V-Core 3 and also using your Mosquito Magnum, which again is a absolutely brilliant piece of equipment. My first question really relates to the Mosquito Magnum, that being mounted on the EVA system, which then goes onto the RatRig V-Core 3. I've had some really amazing results with speed and quality. What goes into the research and development to make such an awesome product?
Yeah, first off, we love that whole setup. Miguel and his team have really come out with an amazing system with that V-Core 3. I mean, really all the RatRig products are pretty impressive. Even their photo stuff, which is kind of what they started with, again, just really well done products. And then the newest V-Core 3 is fantastic. And then Pavel's system on the EVA heads is really incredible. Just the amount of interchangeability that's available there is really cool. It's kind of unique, I would say, in the industry in terms of how capable it is across the board. So yeah, we really like that setup. In terms of our product, the Mosquito Magnum, I mean, it really comes down to kind of two things. First, design. We really are using kind of that same formula as the standard Mosquito hot end, where we've got the roll cage setup that gives you that rigid structure. We've got the bimetallic heat break, which of course is kind of, it's a little bit everywhere now, but we invented that. We invented the bimetallic heat break setup. And the second thing is really quality control. So I'm from a medical device background. I'm used to working with FDA and ISO quality standards, and we do the same thing with our products now. We've got ISO standards that we comply with voluntarily. We don't have to. Obviously, the industry is not regulated, but we do. And so we look at everything from a quality control standpoint of holding really tight tolerances, and making sure the stuff that's going out the door is just really top notch. You know, if something's off just a tiny fraction, you know, it's going to go in the recycle bin instead of going out to a customer. Typically, the recycle bin is like our R&D supply, so it ends up getting used on a printer, but it's going to be used here internally instead of getting sent out to a customer. So that's really what it comes down to. And then, of course, having that extended melt zone, but instead of sending it downwards like you would see in a typical hot end, we're sending it upwards, so you get that higher flow rate without having to go to a longer nozzle or sacrificing Z height, or ending up with sort of a cantilevered setup where you've got a longer moment on that longer hot block that's more likely to break your heat break. In this, with the Magnum, the heat break's protected. You still got that same rigid structure, but you get the higher flow rate capabilities, which we think is great.
Definitely. And that higher flow rate, especially with the V-Core system, is, you know, something that's more than welcomed. It made me wonder, actually, because I was looking at the V-Core 3 as a stock kit. So they do the stock kit and you can change the hot ends out. Back to how this kind of all formulated and how I got involved with Slice to start with was via the Creality S5 with the Droid Builders side, where I'm making robots and big scale stuff. And we got into this conversation, and I think at the time it had just launched on Kickstarter. I missed the whole Kickstarter thing because I wasn't looking into that at that time. I was just quite happy to keep buying the Creality horrible hot ends and just swap them out. And you know, it's really crazy because I'm thinking, you know, the amount of hot ends I went through, you know, it's like, man, and it's right, that's dead. I don't even swap the
disposable part.
Just pull the thing out, chuck it in the bin, next, go. With the beauty of Amazon, obviously you can get a lot of this stuff on the next day. But when it came down to, you know, redefining this whole situation with finding products that are going to work really, really well. So in that particular system, it was SKR Big Tree Tech 1.4 turbo boards, 32-bit, silent stepper drivers. And this thing is so silent, you know, you have to keep looking around to make sure it's actually on.
Make sure it's still on, yeah.
When you're used to kind of like a ZX Spectrum style noise all the time, you kind of go, is this thing even still working? And true to your word, Dan, you know, I got 0 blockages with that. And I don't keep these printers in nice, pristine conditions. You know, these things are
machines.
They are machines, yeah. And I will take them to the bitter end to, you know, in my testing regime to try and get them to break. And I've got to be honest, you know, I've got 3 S5s. I've retired 2 now. 2 of them did have DDX Bondtech elements on it, and then the Slice Engineering copperhead parts on it as well. No blockages, no issues. But I did then start formulating different issues with inertia and weight that's being put onto the bed, because by the time you're loading up 2 or 3 kilos onto, you know,
onto a bed slinger
bed, you've got the springs that are starting to move, you've got the belts that are skipping, and then you get all these other kind of problems. So, you know, going back to the V-Core for a second, because that's obviously a hot topic in my world right now, trying to find a product that I can just go, you know what, I know what these things are. I know what Slice does. I'm very familiar with the copperhead. So when it came into, and I remember sitting there and I was just about to hit the order button. I was going, do I want the Mosquito or do I want the Magnum? And I think there's like a $30, because I bought this from Jake 3D. So I think there was a £30 difference in price. I just went, I'm going to go for the Magnum. And it's almost like it's like buying a car, but it's got that sports badge on it. You know,
right?
It's that kind of thing.
It's the turbo version.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And I got it, and everything about it. And, you know, I'm not blowing smoke here, but the lollipops, the thought that's gone into the design of that. And, you know, going through your website today and some of the wording, some of the copy that you've got on there is, you know, it's exactly what you want to read. You want to feel that, you know, you're getting a hug from a product that, you know, you're spending a lot of money on. And
right.
When I spoke to Nano from Bondtech about the DDX, I was like, man, that's quite expensive. Is there not, you know, can't I just put a BMG on there? And he went, you won't regret buying this product and teaming that up with a Slice product. And he was right. So, you know, fair play to him, because having that belief in a product is massively important. And we go through this cycle, Dan, from, are you somebody that just wants to 3D print? Maybe you work at a school, maybe you're a student. Do you just want to hit the button and it works? Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people will go, yeah,
don't have to think about it again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or are you the type of person that's going to buy a cheap printer, then start upgrading it? And those people, you know, in my opinion, and I've said this before, if your first question in 3D printing is, what should I upgrade first? You've already failed the game, because all you're going to be doing from that point onwards is upgrading stuff and throwing good money after bad, which I know we've spoken about previously. And that process for me is so flawed. So when I went away from the S5 and looked at the RatRig products, I could really see this kind of, well, it's a Core XY and everybody's freaking out about that because it's complicated and all the rest of it. But that whole process and the way that RatRig have come out with this particular system, and that's not the same. That's not been the same with the Pro and the revisions that they've done before that. You kind of had to learn on the job, but now I think they've managed to sort of nail it. And I can only
even their ordering system on their website is very intuitive.
Exactly.
Their instructions are great. I mean, they've really done a great job of rolling out this system.
Absolutely. And like I say, I'm always championing your brands because you speak on a one-to-one with your clients, with your customers. You've got a high retention rate. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. Super high, actually. One of the highest in the industry, which we're very proud of. One of our core values is customer-focused urgency. And, you know, we're not always perfect at it. Certainly, we sometimes get delays because we just get overwhelmed with support requests. But at the top of our priority list always is to get a good response to our customers, to help them with whether it's, you know, some sort of shipping issue or an order got lost, or, you know, obviously with the last 18 months with COVID, things have been a little crazy on the logistics and shipping side of things. So we've had an increase in that type of issue. Just with no matter what carrier we're using. But then on the tech support side, you know, sometimes tech support questions are a little more difficult to answer, but we want to make sure that when we do answer it, it's really getting our full attention, and we're giving you the right answer that we can. And sometimes if we can't answer it, figure it out via email, we'll do a video call, we'll do a phone call. Yeah, we do that all day, every day here in the office. So yeah, I talk to multiple customers a day.
But ironically, I've had zero technical issues with my setup.
That's great.
You know, and that does speak volumes, of course. And I wouldn't even, you know, I wouldn't even think twice, because I'm used to the kind of Chinese mentality. You buy something, hey, if it goes wrong, you throw it away. If you bought something that's of a high quality, it's going to last a lot longer. And again, you know, the first copperhead that I got, I've still got it, and I'm going to be using it. And I was thinking, because I've got just to my left here, I've got the 400 and I've got the 500 version, and I'm just going through the revisions for the upgrade path of the RatRig 1.3, which is the 500 version. And I'm going, again, I'm in that dilemma of going, well, you know, I've got a couple of copperheads here. But,
what do I do with them? Yeah,
they run at 20 to 25 millimeters per second, and the Magnum is 30 to 35. Is that right?
Yeah, cubic millimeters per second. So volumetric, not linear speed. Yeah,
totally. So what's the difference with those two things? So when I'm looking at my flow rate in Clipper, millimeters per second, how does that translate from point to point?
Yeah, so it's going to depend a little bit on your nozzle size, what filament you're using. For example, in the 3D printing process, you know, we've got heat sinks obviously on your hot end. But the main sort of heat sink in the filament extrusion process is not actually the metal part, it's actually the filament, right? Because as you're putting the filament through the hot block, it's absorbing all this heat. So most of that heat is actually being absorbed by the filament and spurted out onto the build plate and not going up into the heat sink. So the linear speed doesn't translate directly into a volumetric flow rate. You can run a formula with, you know, nozzle size, nozzle orifice diameter, and things like that. But when we think of speed, we think of two different possible ways to talk about it. One is linear speed, which is going to be partially controlled by the output that the hot end can do, but also partially controlled by the capabilities of the machine. You know, how rigid is the gantry? You know, what kind of setup do you have with your belts? Do you have lead screws? I mean, there's all these different variables that you've got to look at for linear speed. Yep. And then for volumetric flow rate, it's a little bit of a simpler question, because you're not looking at the dynamics of the full machine. You're more so looking at like the extruder. How hard can the extruder push in, you know, newtons? how much force can you apply, and then how quickly can you get the heat from the hot block conductively into the filament. And so that's power is part of that, right? How powerful is your heater cartridge? How much surface area do you have on that inner bore, the inner diameter of the filament path that is conducting heat into the filament? So that's why a longer melt zone is going to give you a higher volumetric flow rate. So
I understand. Yeah,
it's a long answer to, but
yeah, no, it's really, Dan, it's super interesting because, you know, sometimes I answer a question on Facebook or a Discord or something like that, and you know, I kind of half know what I'm talking about because this is my experience, and it's only through, you know, talking to people like yourself. I'm very visual as well, so sitting there and reading lots and lots of documents and things isn't really my bag. I've kind of one of these people that's got to really see it, understand how it works, take it apart, put it back together, and go, aha, that's how it all works.
That's what makes take. Yeah.
So almost kind of like a reverse engineering kind of element to that as well. Let me get on to my next question. So occasionally I see comparison products talked about which potentially are Mosquito style clones, unfortunately. Now, owning a business myself, I know how important it is for copyright and patent protection. And if you don't invest heavily in research and development without some sort of protection on your design assets, how has this affected Slice's stance on open source technology? And what are your thoughts on users wanting a cost-effective clone or copy of a product that is protected under patent? And I noticed as well when I was writing that question, because obviously I do a little bit of background, I also want to know, why is the copperhead open source, but the Mosquito is not?
Yeah, those are great questions. So we've been pretty open about our intellectual property stance from the beginning. I think there's a little bit of a misconception in the 3D printing community about sort of what is intellectual property and what isn't. And so I think that's probably the first place to start out. Intellectual property isn't just patents. You know, it's trademarks, copyrights, and patents, and trade secrets as well, actually. But there are multiple types of patents. Depending on what jurisdiction you're in. So in Europe, they call them something a little bit different than they do in the US. In the US, there's two types of patents, design and utility. Utility is like the way something works. Design is the way something looks. So when we launched Mosquito, we knew that because it was such a revolutionary product from both a design standpoint and a utility standpoint, that we would need to protect it, or else we were going to be run out of business, essentially, you know. So obviously we don't want to just be a one-trick pony that kind of a one and done kind of deal where we came up with some cool product and then didn't continue to innovate. We want to continue to innovate. We care about our engineers that we have employed here. We care about continuing to develop new products that will continue to push the envelope forward for 3D printing. And so we were looking at, when we started, how do we make sure that that can happen, that we have a sustainable business model? And so from the very beginning, we knew that we would need to have both patent protected and open source products. And then we released them sort of in stages because we've got a really small team and we couldn't just launch everything at the same time. And it took some work, you know, to develop all these things. So we launched the Mosquito initially with, you know, some patent protection, and those patents have been granted. They were, of course, pending when we launched, but they've now been granted. And then, you know, when we released the copperhead. It was, I think, maybe 12 to 18 months. I forget the exact timing, but after we launched the Mosquito, and that is a fully open source product. In fact, it's so open source that we post our actual manufacturing drawings and CAD files on the internet, which no other free or FOSH, free and open source hardware company does. Even if you look at you know, some of the sort of original open source hardware on the electronic side, like your Raspberry Pi, Adafruit, some of those original companies that sort of kicked off the open source hardware movement.
Yep.
They're not posting their actual manufacturing drawings, you know, they're posting some sort of like dumbed down version. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is just the approach that we've taken. and we call that really a hybrid approach. So we have intellectual property protection in some areas, and then we try to help out the community as much as we can to encourage that type of innovation in other areas. So we're passionate about being involved in the 3D printing community. We have gotten great feedback from the community, and obviously we sell, the community is our customers, but we also sell to national labs here in the States and the U.S. military, and some of our products are on $250,000 3D printers, and those people, that customer base doesn't, not only do they not care about open source, but to them, open source is actually would prevent us from working with that customer base. So in order to continue to innovate and continue to support our team sustainably, we had to find a hybrid model, what we call a hybrid model. And there are other companies that are doing a hybrid model. They might not just call it the same thing, but most of the companies that you see that say that they're open source also have trademarks, also have copyrights, and they are enforcing those trademarks and copyrights across the internet. So it is very disingenuous to say that.
Yeah, but I think it's important that you do, Dan. You know, and again, if I created something in my business, and you know, I would certainly want to protect that. And you know, I mentioned the guy that invented the internet. You know, he got nothing. He got nothing out of that. You know, and that is the biggest, best thing in the entire world right now. It's the biggest thing. And you know, I know when we spoke before the interview, and we talked about the Kickstarter hoverboards, and you mentioned that that guy got ripped off even before the Kickstarter had finished. So you know what it does is it undermines, as far as I'm concerned with that, it undermines the whole process of evolution within a business and within the product range. So essentially, if you buy a knockoff clone, and let's be fair, you know, one of the more famous ones certainly inside the 3D printing world is the BMG clone, which seems to be on pretty much everything 3D printer that's kind of even nearly half decent. And you know, I'm just waiting for the LGX to be, you know, copied in some way. I do know that there's one called the OMG, which is another Chinese manufactured product, which is, you know, and you start seeing all these kind of like, oh, okay, I see what they've done with that, and that's all metal, and they've done this and they've done that. But you know, it does undermine the product. And I certainly think if you're wanting to support good products, then, you know, personally, I'd always buy from source, which is obviously why I buy from you guys or J3D.
We appreciate.
Yeah, indeed. So, you know, and of course, the other thing, Dan, as well, you know, shipping, you touched on that earlier. If I was to buy from you and ship to the UK, I think it's like $70, $80 to ship a hot end to the UK. So I am, you know, even with a 10% discount or any of those kinds of crazy things, if you're in the US, it kind of makes sense to buy directly from you. But if you're in Europe or the UK or, you know, kind of outside of the US,
support your local reseller.
Indeed. Because, you know, and although Slice, you know, from a manufacturing point of view, from source, it is slightly cheaper. You're still going to be buying an excellent product, and it's going to cost you less in the long run because you're not going to be paying the import fees and the shipping and all the other stuff that kind of comes with that. And was that kind of a Brexit issue as well for the UK market?
Yeah, we used to have much cheaper shipping to the UK specifically, and it's gotten very expensive. We add almost nothing. I think we add like $1 to cover our own costs on top of what we get charged from the shipper. Wow. So, you know, it's not we're not making money on shipping. I can tell you that. But you know, it's just become very expensive to ship to certain places, and I think Brexit has significantly. I know Brexit has significantly affected that. So we are actively working to increase our reseller network, especially in the UK. And
I think we've got 3 or 4 partners out here now, which is encouraging to see. And you know, everybody sort of seems to stick to their guns because ultimately it's a quality product. So, which is fantastic. So, just our third question here, Dan, is going to be getting back onto the flow rates. The 3 elements that I think are important are, number 1, the extruder to push the material through to the cool element. 2, the chamber from cool to hot. 3, the nozzle. These 3 elements working together is essential for extrusion, which inwardly leads to the physics of a 3D printing speed, quality, and performance. What am I missing here? and how does Slice go about working on these complicated problems when it comes out and is down to design? So specifically, I'm talking about originally using the S5, where you're printing, you know, you're probably not printing any more than around about 60 millimeters per second, to going to the RatRig product, which, you know, I'm quite happy from a speed, efficiency, and printer quality or print quality at 200 millimeters per second. Easily 200 millimeters per second.
Significant difference there, right?
well, it is. You know what? When I've got something on at the moment, and when I sliced it, it said this would take 3 days to print, because I don't tend to do small prints. It's not a 5-hour print.
Yeah, your drones aren't this big.
Exactly right. Yeah. So big parts that I tend to make, and of course, this is part of why I would use the Slice products, because I don't want the stuff to clog. I want the thing to. I want to come down the stairs in the morning, or go out to the garage or the workshop or whatever, and I want to see that print's completed. I don't want this big hairy mess of rubbish everywhere. So going from 60 millimeters per second and hoping, fingers crossed, that actually the print's all right in the morning, to, you know, what I would call the Prusa style of pushing the button and coming down and going, yeah, that's sound in the morning because it's used quality parts. Where do I go from your perspective, from going from 60 millimeters per second to 200 millimeters per second, and where does this go onwardly? Because all of a sudden it goes from, hey, we're producing Enders, to we're producing Core XY, and now the speed and clarity of the print is actually more of an important factor than you know, just being able to print. And obviously this comes down to a lot of things. That's say, for instance, PLA plus, PETG, those kind of filaments. I'm not talking about PEEK. I'm not talking about polycarbonate.
Yeah, you don't need a heated chamber. You're not talking about, you know, implanting this into a person. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so I'm talking about, and how does that look across the board from you? Sorry to bamboozle your questions here. I'm just so interested on, like, you know, how do you sit down and go, yeah, so there's like 900 different filaments. Where do we start?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got some filament. We have certain filament companies that we work with that have a you know, wide range of materials. So that's, I guess, a good place to start. And we have a massive library of filaments where you know, we've got sort of all the, you know, sort of basic normal things that you would think, and then we also have some really exotic stuff, and we have to try all those things on a bunch of different machines to make sure that we're sort of covering our bases when we come out with something new. So that's part of the process, is this sort of iterative, you know, design refinement as we test various things on different platforms. But we've also gotten, I mean, we've come out with quite a few hot ends at this point, so we've gotten pretty good at figuring out, okay, this is probably going to be a problem area. This is probably going to be a problem area. We'll focus on those. So I guess getting back to your core question around design, is we've got a formula that kind of works with like the Mosquito product line, right? And so we're building on that. And then we've got this formula that works with the Copperhead product line around the bimetallic heat break and that really light, small hot block that is easy to take off and put a new nozzle on. And so we're sort of building and expanding out those two product lines to accommodate new needs and new niches in the market. You may have seen our new Magnum Plus hot end. Bez 3D did a video about that. Tom Sanlauder used it on his recent Voron build. So that has really high flow rates, 100 watts of heating power maximum. We're doing up to like 90 cubic millimeters a second of throughput, which is just pretty crazy for a filament hot end. We're pretty excited about it. As you can see, the smile is coming through. I'm pumped about that hot end. So with that, we're looking at kind of the same basic principles that I was talking about at the beginning. Is, okay, we're going to make the melt zone longer, but we're also going to try and maximize the conductive surface area of the hot block that is touching the filament. So instead of having a really long nozzle like some of our competitors do, we use the same length nozzle, and then we have a hot block that's directly contacting the filament. So instead of having to go from hot block to threads, right? And then the threads are actually only, if you look at threads sort of in profile, I wish I could, they're like this, right? So back to your visual, YouTube video is better, right? So the threads are like this. So there's only certain contact area through the threads. So then you've got a bunch of air gaps in there. So all those air gaps are soaking up heat that's not being transferred to the filament. So you've got that on the hot block side, and then you've got that on the nozzle side. And if you're using like a hardened nozzle, for example, you're not going to transfer as much heat as quickly. And so you sort of retard the system in the sense that you're slowing down the response rate of the system to heater inputs and to putting more power into the filament. So Magnum Plus eliminates all of that. We've got a flow path where it's going straight out of the heat break into a hot block that is directly contacting the filament. And so you don't get to the nozzle where you've got thread engagement that is reducing the conductive heat transfer until the last 6 millimeters of the block. So you've got a much longer block that is absorbing that heat and pushing it into the filament. And that's how you get that maximum flow rate. And we're doing the same thing with the Magnum hot end, just at a little bit smaller scale. Spending like $40 or $50 on a hot end, it sometimes is a little bit of a difficult sort of pill to swallow, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I see people going, oh, well, I'll just go and get this. But, understanding actually the complexities on how this works. And certainly if you're spending, a couple $100 on a on a setup here, don't go half the hog. You might as well go the whole hog and get all the elements that are frequently tested together in order to get the results ultimately that you need. So the RatRig V-Core 3 uses an independently designed Either 2 mounting system. I know that I emailed you about Pavel's design work a little while ago. What are your thoughts on the EVA design? Are independent smaller designers considered when launching your products into the marketplace? That's a great question. So we do get some sort of design input from the community, absolutely. We try to be very responsive to when people ask for feature changes or compatibility with a certain printer. It's something that we take very, very seriously, and it definitely affects our product roadmap, so to speak, of what we're going to be developing and working on in the future. Pavel's done a phenomenal job on that whole EVA system. We think it's super, super cool. I wish I had known about it before we launched certain things, but yeah. So what I'd say is, if you are an independent designer and you're watching this, please reach out to us. We're always happy to work with people. We're definitely always trying to find ways to creatively collaborate with people. So if you've got an idea that you want to run by us, or you've got something that you want to make that's going to be compatible with our stuff, or you want us to make something that's compatible with yours, just drop us a line, let us know, and we're happy to work with you. Living proof here. Hey, I'm this guy that's building R2D2s. And you're like, hey, you're right. Let's set up a meeting then. This is weird. But a year later, a year down the line, I'm still at it. I'm still doing all these things and making these crazy things. And as we spoke about off camera a minute ago, this whole droid here, which is going to be at the TCT Birmingham show, which you're going to, by the way. Yes, we're going to. I'm super excited to travel internationally. I'm mega excited about that. So is it your first time into the UK? Have you been here before? I have been to the UK once for like 40 hours. Right, okay. So are you staying for the duration? Are you? Yeah, we'll be there for the whole show, for the whole TCT 360 show, which I'm very excited about, like I said. Well, ironically, I was in the mindset of, do I stay up there the whole weekend, or do I get a hotel, or what do I do? Do I just go for the day? I think we're going to have to sort of grab a beer, I think. And for sure. We have to make that happen. Chew the fat. So my final and fifth question, Dan, and thank you so much for being so patient and listening to my interesting line of questioning, perhaps. Question number 5. I was excited to see that Slice Engineering products are being used on a broad range of new upgraded printers. We touched on the Creality upgrade, but it was great to see that the system is now being used on the Luzbot on the M175 toolhead, which is being used with the Bridgemaster nozzle. Should we be expecting any more big announcements this particular year? I I think we're always working on what we think are big announcements. Of course, it kind of depends on what you're excited about, whether an announcement is big for you or not. But we're always excited about seeing our hardware on new machines, and kind of our mission is to help people transform their ideas into realities, just like you're using 3D printing to build robot parts. I mean, you got an R2-D2 right there, which is fantastic because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. But that's what gets us out of bed in the morning, myself and the whole team, is how do we help people take whatever idea they have and turn it into something tangible? And that's really, I think, the beauty of 3D printing is that, if you had to make your R2-D2 a decade ago, you were carving that by hand. You were doing the whole thing. I mean, I think your example is a really, really good example because you've been doing this for a good period of time. And it's like there's a pre-3D printing process and there's a post-3D printing process. And the difference in the amount of work that it takes is incredible. It's stunning. And so 3D printing, I think, is the first technology that allows sort of anybody that is willing to spend a little bit of time on the computer to take an idea from their head and have it tangible in not that long a period of time. And that's what gets me excited every day. So yeah,
we're talking 5 years, Dan, going from a one-howl duplicator that printed 150 by 150, and that thing was dreadful. That did burst into flames. This was a dreadful printer. It surprises me that the company's still going, but then it moved on to like I say, the Creality stuff. The 300 really kind of changed it for me. I never really touched on the Ender series. And, as we've evolved and as, I've got involved with YouTube, involved with lots of 3D printing manufacturers, I'm really kind of looking for that next big thing. And, certainly from my perspective, the RatRig is certainly that. I can print a whole droid on this, in probably, half the time it would take me to do on any other printer, within reason, of course, backed obviously with your products, plug. But, you're right. It has dramatically changed. And of course, the traditional way of building things is, wood and metal and, sculpting and all those kind of ways of doing things. And 3D printing is very much the new kid on the block. And, I'm thankful that, you guys are so open and adaptable to, people like myself that are saying, hey, I want to try and do this. And can I maybe pick your brains on this and maybe ask you, you're the CEO, for goodness sake, I'm just some guy that's building robots. It's mad to think that, you've got that kind of personal touch with the community as well. And, that is absolutely amazing. And, hats off to you, all credit to you guys. You're doing a fabulous job.
I really appreciate that. It's we're again passionate about what we're doing. Everybody on the team, we're people that are using 3D printers ourselves, and it's really awesome to be able to work with somebody that's building droids, and then also work with universities that are using robot arms to print stuff in space. I mean, it's really it's incredible.
The part that really interests me is like STEAM and STEM, and that isn't really that big in the UK at the moment, but it's kind of getting there. And during lockdown, I got to do some 1-to-1s or 1-to-30s with school children that are interested in robots.
That's awesome.
I got to do Zoom calls and things like that. And, every day for me is pretty much a school day. You're always educating. You're always answering questions. You're always talking to people and trying to help people out. And, I think there needs to be a lot more of that, certainly within these communities. And there is a lot more of that in these communities. And, sometimes people just need a little bit of space to breathe, not get too excited, and just remember that, we're all part of the machine here, and we're all trying to do something awesome. So, it's, but listen, Dan, thank you so much. I'm now super, super excited because I noticed you guys were sponsoring the TCT event, but I didn't think for 1 minute that you were going to come over. So I'm absolutely made up about that. And I'm sure there's a lot of the guys that, are going to visit, they're going to go and see the new machines and things that are going to want to meet you and shake your hand and
sure.
I look tell you how fantastic the products are. So thank you so much for joining me today. And we'll see you very, very soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So thank you once again to Dan from Slice Engineering. We are at the end of the time. Thank you very much to everybody. If you've managed to make it this far, don't forget, guys, to hit the subscribe button and maybe even give us a little bit of a like if you have enjoyed the video. If you haven't, well, give it a like anyway. You know, we're all friends here. I am going to be at the TCT 360 show as well, and obviously Dan is as well, and a bunch of other people. If you are going, let me know that you're going. Make sure you hit a comment below. If you agree, if you don't agree with the open source elements, let me know what you think about this in this video. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.